All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Esri Developer Summit and this presentation of ArcGIS Field Maps, Markup and Map Viewing. My name is Christopher Dunn, and my co-presenter Alex Power, who will take over later. She and I are both product engineers on the Field Apps team. We work primarily with the new Field Maps application, and we're going to tell you a little bit about how it works and some of the cool new tools and features. For the presentation today, we're going to do a quick field maps overview, and I'm going to talk a little bit about ways you can find your different maps and make sure they show up in the application, and different things you can do while using your maps. Some of the different tools we've added that you might not be familiar with if you're coming from the collector or explorer world, and some of the functionality that is brand new to field maps. There'll be a demo of the markup function, and then we'll cover some resources for field maps and for markup and just do a quick review. So field maps overview. What is field maps? You might already be familiar with field maps, but if you are not, it is our new all-in-one mobile mapping solution, combining the spatial data collection and editing capabilities of Collector, the read-only and map sharing capabilities of Explorer, and the location tracking functions of Tracker. We wanted to provide a single app that gives our users tools for map viewing and markup, high accuracy field data collection and inspection workflows, battery optimized location tracking, work planning and task management, and turn-by-turn navigation. Those last two, the navigator and workforce capabilities, they're on the roadmap and they are still in development. So using a old multi-app workflow with Explorer and Collector together, users would need to figure out which apps they need to use to satisfy their requirements. They would need to download and sign into each app individually, download multiple copies of map data if they're working offline, and switch between multiple apps to complete those workflows. This could lead to confusion and frustration for mobile workers and project managers that are attempting to coordinate everything. So because of these reasons, we're bringing together the capabilities of these 5 apps into a single app. Our goal for ArcGIS Field Maps is that it is the only app your mobile workforce needs to complete their map-centric workflows. They'll be able to do everything that I mentioned: collect data, mark up maps, capture their location, and then eventually complete assignments and navigate to assets and features all in one app. One thing I'll touch on real quick, because this does come up a lot, is licensing. While this is a new app, the licensing is built on the same user capability licensing that comes from ArcGIS Online that our other apps are. So if you want to use tracker functionality, you need a tracker license. If you want to collect data, you need data editing privileges, and so on. If you are a current user of Collector or Tracker, then in switching to field maps, none of your licensing requirements should change. But viewer-only license will be new to you if you've only used Collector before, so you don't need to have a Collector license in order to sign into field maps and view maps in a read-only state. So let's talk about how you find your maps in field maps. When you first sign into field maps, what you see will depend on a few things, like if you have your own maps that you've created, if you have groups that you belong to, if you have favorited any maps, or if you have a tracker license. For instance, you can see here that I have a tracker license, so I have this My Tracks map card where you can view your tracks, and you can even toggle tracking on and off directly from the map card. If you have favorited any maps, they will appear in this favorite section, and they can be added or removed from your favorites right here in Field Maps. If you hit this overflow, there's this unfavorite button. You can also add and remove maps from your favorites in ArcGIS Online. After favorites, we have the My Maps section, which is a list of all the maps that you own, you being the user you are logged into Field Maps as. This will also show your current map. So if you open a map and then go back into the browse screen, you will see a new section at the top called Current. And then if you scroll all the way to the bottom of your map list, which I will do quickly through the magic of editing, you will see any groups that you belong to down here, and you can, they're shown as folders, and you can navigate into those and see all the maps in those groups, and you can search for maps within those groups. Once you're back in the main browse screen and scroll up to the top, you can also use the search bar here, where you can start searching by title. Like if I want to see maps that feature arcade, I can search for arcade maps. And you can also search by capability, which is a new feature we've added. If you just want to see your editable maps, you can select editing for the editing capability, and you can see maps that are editable. Or you can also just search for read-only maps. And as we add new functionality to field maps, such as the navigation or workforce features, then some of those capabilities will be added to that filter as well. And one key thing I would like to point out is a new setting that has been added to web map items in ArcGIS Online that allows maps to be shown in field maps. So here I've jumped over to ArcGIS Online. You can see this map is in my favorites. So this is another way you can add or remove maps from your favorites. But if I go to the settings and scroll down, you'll see there are two checkboxes, one for use in ArcGIS Collector and one for use in ArcGIS Field Maps Mobile. If I uncheck this box, then that map will not show up in the Field Maps mobile app anymore. And this use in ArcGIS Collector checkbox drives the editability of the map. So even if your map has an editable layer and the user has editing permissions, if this box is unchecked, then the data collection fab will not show up in the map view. So those are two ways you can help control what maps show up in the app and what people can do with them. So if I save this, this map will no longer show up in field maps. And now I'm back in the mobile app. You can see the editable map card under my favorites. But since I unchecked that box, if I pull down to refresh my browse view, that map has disappeared. So those are some ways you can find and manage your web maps. But what about your offline content, your mobile map packages, and your offline areas? Let's talk about those a little bit. If you are not familiar with mobile map packages, they're something that are supported in Explorer and Navigator, but will be new to Collector users. They're basically a file that you export from ArcGIS Pro that contains everything you need to have a completely offline map experience. They show up in the browse view of field maps with a map card just like a web map, but they have this little download icon, so I'll start downloading one right now. When you create them in Pro, they contain your base map, they contain your operational layers, your pop-up configuration, the ability to search for your features and your assets, and you can include a locator if you want to search for addresses. And then you can upload them to your ArcGIS Online account directly from Pro or by publishing the individual file and then uploading it. And you can download them from the browse view, or you can actually sideload them onto your device by connecting it to a computer. When you go offline, they give you, full access to all of your maps and data and the same functionality you would see in a web map. You can do things like drop pins and search and all that good stuff. If you aren't using mobile map packages, but you want to take your maps into an offline disconnected environment, you can enable offline use in the web map settings, and you can create offline areas ahead of time for your mobile users. So I'll go into the menu for this tree inspections offline map. You can see it says offline areas, and it takes you into the folder that shows the offline areas that you can download. And you can also create what we call ad hoc offline areas, where you actually define the offline area while using your device. You can pick the extent that you want and zoom in and out. You can set the level of detail if you're using a raster-based map. You don't need to if you're using a vector-based map. So I'll just zoom in on this one tree and download the area. And just like a mobile map package, these offline areas have all of the same capabilities you would expect in the web map. You can tap on a feature to view like related records. You can collect data and sync it. You can do all the same stuff that you can with a web map. You can also sideload base maps as well as mobile map packages, and those base maps will be available in the base map picker for your offline areas and for your web maps. So this is the prepared offline area. And as you can see, I can still select one of my trees. I can view related records for the inspections. This one doesn't have any, but I could add one and then sync it. So it's got everything that you would expect, but it can work completely offline. So just to quickly summarize what we've covered so far, when you sign into Field Maps, you will see all the maps that you have available to you that are in your favorites, that you own, or that show up in groups that you belong to. You can, scroll through browse to find them. You can search for them, or you can filter by the capability. One thing that I think I did not show in my demo is that when you search by title, that will search the maps that you own, but that will also search your organization for maps that are shared with your organization that you then have permission to view. So you can find maps that don't initially show up in the browse view by searching by title. So that's another way that you can track your maps down. We talked about how to make maps visible in Field Maps using that Use in Field Maps checkbox. And we covered Field Maps support for offline areas via pre-planned offline or ad hoc offline areas for a web map, and Field Maps support for mobile map packages. So now that you know how to find the map that you want to use, let's talk about ways you can interact with your maps and your data in those maps using the various map tools that Field Maps has available. So here I have a map with a layer containing the Great Lakes. Field Maps has several tools available for interacting with your maps and your data. First, I'll highlight just some quick basic functionality that is available in all maps that you're probably familiar with if you're a collector or explorer user. And then I'll show you some things that you can do with your data and some features that are new to Field Maps. When you first open a map, it will show the default base map that has been chosen for that map, whether it's one that Esri provides or one that your organization created or maintains. The base map picker you may be familiar with from ArcGIS Online is also available in Field Maps. So you can change the base map as you see fit. It's here in the overflow menu. You've got all of your normal base maps available here. And any tile packages that you have sideloaded onto the device will show up in the base map picker as well. So you can choose from a local base map if you have one available. You can also see things like your bookmarks from your web map, and Alex will demonstrate that in her demo later. You can view your legend, which is also dynamic. So if you have a scale visibility set on a layer, as you zoom in and out, if the layer disappears, it will disappear from the legend. Speaking of Alex's demo, there's also the markup tool, which we'll see in depth in a few minutes. And we also have a measure tool, which you can use for distances in areas. So I can select that. I'll zoom in a little and show you how that works. Say we want to measure how long this lake is. You can just tap to drop a point, tap to drop your second point, and then you get a distance. You can choose your units. I want to see it in miles. And you can also switch to an area tool. So if I wanted to get a rough estimate of the area of this lake, I could do so just by tapping to add points. And that also has various units available. I just hit done to return. There's a share map tool in this overflow menu, which will generate an app link that will allow someone else to open the same map you are viewing. If you're not familiar, I will open the link in my Notes app just so you can see what it contains. It's basically a URL that will allow someone to open Field Maps and pass specific parameters that tell the app what to do when it opens. In this case, you can see the reference context for center, so it knows when it opens the map to center on the given coordinates. And it has an item ID for the web map that I want to open, and then the center and scale parameter tells the app where to actually center that map view. We have some documentation on app links under the deploy help topic if you're interested in learning more about those. Going back to the map, We've also got the layer tool. This shows all the layers in the map and allows you to turn them on and off, including your tracks if you have a tracking license and tracking is turned on. And you can also turn on and off any markup that you have created or that you have imported. The last tool I'm going to talk about is the search tool. You can search for addresses or attributes from your data. So first, I'm going to switch back to ArcGIS Online and show you how to configure a web map so your features are searchable. Here we see the item page for the Great Lakes web map that I just had open in Field Maps. So when I go to the settings and scroll down to the web map settings and application settings, you can see some checkboxes here for find locations. I currently have by address checked, so I can search for addresses using my organization's geocoder. But if I add by layer, then I can add a layer from the map. Great Lakes is the only one in there. I can pick which field. Currently has a name field, and you can choose either contains or equals. For this, I will choose contains. You can add multiple layers and multiple fields for the same layer if you want to be able to search for different things. So it's just good to be aware of how your map is configured if you or your users are going to be using it for search. And I'll keep using ArcGIS Field Maps mobile checked and then hit save. And then when I go back into Field Maps, I will be able to search for the various Great Lakes by name. Here I am back in Field Maps, and in order to apply the settings I just changed for the web map, I need to return to Browse, and in the overflow menu choose Reload Map. The map will return to its default state, but apply any new changes. So if I were to search for Michigan, I get the suggestions from the geocoder. When I choose search, I will also see my feature for the Great Lakes. You can see it's highlighted and I get the pop-up. So the search tool, it lets you search for addresses. It lets you search for whatever you have configured in your feature layers. If you're using a mobile map package, you can search for addresses from the locator you have included. And it can search multiple layers at once, so it can be a very useful tool for finding the data that you need. I want to talk briefly about the tracker tool and the floor picker from the indoor capabilities that we've added to Field Maps. So if you have a tracker license, as I mentioned before, you'll see this My Tracks card where you can actually activate tracker and give it a duration, and then you can view your tracks in the track card. And if you have, turn on the layer tool, you can see your My Tracks and turn them on and off in any map, and you can access some of the options for how long you want to keep tracking and how you want them to render on the map. We have lots of other resources and presentations about tracker available out there as well. I just wanted to show the tool in use here in Field Maps. And the last tool I wanted to just briefly touch on is the floor picker associated with the ArcGIS Indoors capabilities. I've jumped over to a new map, and here you can see a building outline. If I zoom in, we'll start to get some detail from the Indoors data model, and this floor picker has come up. So you can actually pick floor 1, 2, or 3, and you'll see the building update. And you can zoom in a little bit more to get more labels and information about each of the offices or the parts of the building, the conference rooms, restrooms, things like that. And just like with a regular feature layer, you can tap on it to get the pop-up and get more information. And then I can access the floor picker, switch to another floor, and have the layer update on the fly. So it's very neat. If you are using ArcGIS Indoors, then we're adding more and more capabilities to Field Maps for that. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Alex, who is going to talk a bit about markup and give a demonstration of the markup tool. Alex?
Thanks, Chris. The markup tool allows users to capture notes or sketches in a map. They can be free lines, polygons, or points. They can also be done online or offline. Markups can then be uploaded to ArcGIS Online or shared or received using text, email, or AirDrop. I'm now going to show a demo on how to use markup. I'm going to be demoing the markup tool using real-life scenarios with culverts, which are structures that allow water to flow under the road, similar to what I have here. Here I have a map open of Nova Scotia road assets. I'm going to be using this map to do culvert assessments in Nova Scotia after a large rainstorm, in which I will highlight information about flooded culverts using the markup tool. The blue dot on the map indicates my current location. I'm currently traveling to my first culvert, so I'm going to use the bookmarks tool to navigate to it. From the overflow menu, I select bookmarks. I then select my first culvert. Now that I am in the area of the first culvert, I can begin my culvert assessments. Here, the map shows a flashing light, a road sign, and a culvert. These are the attribute values associated with the culvert. The culvert is flooded, so I'm going to use the markup tool to highlight information about it. The markup tool is a way to capture sketches and notes on the map. They can be saved as a layer on the device and can be used across maps. With the markup tool, I can create markers, which are points, lines, and freehand shapes. To open up the markup tool, I will go again to the overflow menu and select markup. First, I'm going to create two markup layers. To do so, I'm going to tap on the markup layers icon in the top left-hand corner of the screen. Here in the layers screen, I can add, remove, or rename markup layers. By default, the app provides this markup layer. I'm going to create my first layer called Culvert Assessments by tapping on the add icon and then naming it. As you probably noticed, I have a typo in my layer name, so I can fix it by renaming it. I'm going to add my second layer called To Do. There are a couple things I want to do here. I can remove the default layer, and I then want to select the layer I'm going to be doing markup on. In this assessment, I'm going to add the flooded area of the culvert using a freehand area, as well as the water flow direction through the culvert using a line, and any distressed animals using a marker. I'm going to create the freehand flooded area by drawing on the screen, in which the tool is designed to designate whether it is a polygon or a line. The graphic will then show on the map, and the information for this area will show in the panel. I can change the color, fill in the graphic, and add notes, such as the road may be flooded soon. For this type of assessment, it is important to indicate the water flow direction through the culvert. I will do this by drawing a line in the direction of the flow across the screen. I will make this straight by selecting the autocomplete shape, change the color, and add an arrow at the end of the line. It is also important to indicate any distressed animals and the direction the animals are moving. I will do this by holding the index finger on the screen, in which I can then change the color, add an arrow, and change the size and the direction of the arrow by holding down on the arrow and dragging it. I can then add a label to indicate what type of animal this is. In this case, it is an endangered Blanding's turtle. If there are other distressed animals, I can add another marker and a new label. While I was doing my culvert assessments, I noticed work to do on the flashing light, so I'm going to add a note to myself that I need to come back tomorrow. I will put a note in my to-do layer. After I selected that layer, you see that the culvert assessment layer disappeared. This is because only one markup layer will show at a time in the markup tool. I'm now going to mark the area around the flashing light. I'm done with the markup tool, so I'm going to close the tool by tapping Done. In my main screen, I can see both markup layers. I can hide one of them if I want to by using the Layers tool and selecting the switch to make it invisible. I would now like to know if the flooded area impedes a protected area. I need to open up my protected areas map, so if I go back to Browse, select my map, and then if I go into the Layers tool and select the Culvert Assessment row, it will bring me to the extent of the markup. Tapping the markup lets me see information associated with that area. I can see that this flooded area impedes a protected area. So I would like to add that to notes. I can go into Markup tool again, select the Culvert Assessment layer, and then edit the note. I can then see that my water flow direction arrow is slightly to the right, so I can tap on the arrow and drag it to the right. I would now like to share information with the GIS analyst. I can either share a markup or a screenshot, which in this case I'm going to choose the markup layer, and then ArcGIS Online. I'm then going to rename it and select and then add it to the group for all the markups by tapping the switch beside Culvert Assessments and then select Save. The markup layer is a feature collection, and in ArcGIS Online functions like a feature layer where it can be added to a map and pulled into ArcGIS Pro. Every time a markup layer is shared, it comes in as a new feature collection. It will not overwrite or update. ArcGIS Online allows items to have the same name, therefore it is important to give them a unique name. Now that the culvert assessment is in ArcGIS Online, I no longer want it on my device, so I can clear it from the layer by tapping Clear All and then closing the markup tool. Chris has been working in another area and shared his markup with me to review. Markups can be sent via text message or email. Here's a view of the markup he sent me via text. Tapping on the markup shows me the context menu. We're choosing Save will save it to My Files on the device. Now if I go to Files and open up the markup, tapping it will bring me to the foreground, where it will ask me to provide a name for this markup layer. Chris's culvert assessments are now a new markup layer for me, and which can be changed in the markup tool and made visible or invisible in the Layers tool. Alright, now just to mention some of the best practices and pitfalls for markup. The first is that you need to be logged in and have your map open to import a shared markup file. Second, that when a markup file comes in, it will import as a new markup layer. It won't be combined with any existing markup layers. And third, the best apps for sharing or receiving markups are text, email, and AirDrop. We can't guarantee how other third-party apps will treat a markup file. And just a brief summary and review of our presentation. We first talked about finding maps, so searching for maps, groups, and favorites. We talked about offline maps, so offline areas and mobile map packages. We then talked about map tools, so bookmarks, base map, layers, legend, measure, share, searching for data and locations. And then we also talked about advanced tools like tracking, indoors, and markup, and then ended with some best practices for markup. Here are just a few useful links for getting started with field maps and the markup tool. Our help site and our GeoNet sites have many more articles and blog posts. Also be sure to check out learn.arcgis.com for more tutorials. And if you have any questions or feedback, you can post on GeoNet or drop us an email at arcgisfieldmaps@esri.com. This is our presentation. Thank you for attending. We hope you enjoy the rest of our Developer Summit. And if you don't mind, please provide your feedback for this session by clicking on the session survey link directly below this video.